A blonde had been married for about a year. One day, she came running up to her husband, jumping for joy. He didn't know how to react, so he started jumping up and down along with her. "Why are we so happy?" he asked. She said, "Honey, I have some really great news for you." "Great," he said. "Tell me what you're so happy about." She stopped, breathless from all the jumping up and down. "I'm pregnant," she gasped. The husband was ecstatic, as they had been trying for quite a while. He grabbed her and kissed her. "Wow, that is wonderful. I couldn't be happier." Then she said, "Oh, honey, there's more." "What do you mean more?" he asked. "Well, we are not having just one baby. We are going to have twins." He was amazed at how she could know so soon after getting pregnant. "How do you know that?" he asked. "It was easy," she said. "I went to the pharmacy and bought the 2-pack home pregnancy test kit. Both tests came out positive." 3 women work in the same office with the same female boss. Every day they noticed the boss left work early. One day the girls decided that when the boss left, they'd be right behind her. After all, she never called or came back, so how was she to know? The brunette was thrilled to be home early. She did a little gardening and went to bed early. The redhead was elated to be able to get in a quick workout at her spa before meeting a dinner date. The blonde was happy to be home, but when she got to her bedroom, she heard a muffled noise from inside. Slowly, quietly, she cracked open the door and was mortified to see her husband in bed with her boss. Ever so gently, she closed the door and crept out of her house. The next day, at coffee break, the brunette and redhead mentioned leaving early again and asked the blonde if she was with them. "No way," she exclaimed. "I almost got caught yesterday." A young, sexy woman passing by Tom's pet shop saw art that said, "Monkey who does great s." She went in, bought that monkey, and walked away with the instruction manual. The manual: give a good bath to the monkey, then you take a bath. Make him sit on the bed and you lie down without wearing anything. Leave the rest to the monkey. Repeat all steps for repeat performance. According to the woman, gave the monkey a bath, bathed herself, and slept on the naked. The monkey did nothing. Disappointed, she again gave him a bath, had a bath, and lay down naked on the bed. Again, the monkey did nothing. She referred to the manual again. It said, "In case of no activity, call the shop owner for support." She called and Tom arrived in 10 minutes. He asked the woman to lie down. He then looked at the monkey and shouted, "This is the last time I'm teaching you! Watch carefully and learn." This blonde decides one day that she is sick and tired of all these blonde jokes and how all blondes are perceived as not too bright. So she decides to show her husband that blondes really are smart. While her husband is off at work, she decides that she is going to paint a couple of rooms in the house. The next day, right after her husband leaves for work, she gets down to the task at hand. Her husband arrives home at 5:30 and smells the distinctive smell of paint. He walks into the living room and finds his wife lying on the floor in a pool of sweat. He notices that she is wearing a ski jacket and a fur coat at the same time. He goes over and asks her if she is okay. She replies yes. He asks what she is doing. She replies that she wanted to prove to him that not all blonde women are crazy, and she wanted to do it by painting the house. He then asks her why she has a ski jacket over her fur coat. She replies that she was reading the directions on the paint can and they said, "For best results, put on 2 coats." The 6th grade science teacher, Mrs. Parks, asked her class which human body part increases to 10 times its size when stimulated. No one answered until little Mary stood up and said, "You should not be asking 6th graders a question like that. I'm going to tell my parents and they will go and tell the principal, who will then fire you." Mrs. Parks ignored her and asked the question again. Which body part increases to 10 times its size when stimulated? Little Mary's mouth fell open. Then she said to those around her, "Boy, is she going to get in big trouble." The teacher continued to ignore her and said to the class, "Anybody?" Finally, Billy stood up, looked around nervously, and said, "The body part that increases 10 times its size when stimulated is the pupil of the eye." Mrs. Parks said, "Very good, Billy," then turned to Mary and continued, "As for you, young lady, I have 3 things to say. 1, you have a dirty mind. 2, you didn't read your homework. And 3, one day you are going to be very, very disappointed." Yesterday, my son emailed me asking why I didn't do something useful with my time. Like sitting around playing on my computer is not a good thing? I asked. Talking about my doing something useful seems to be his favorite topic of conversation. He said he was only thinking of me, he said, and suggested that I go down to the senior center and hang out with the ladies. I did this, and when I got home last night, I decided to play a prank on him. I emailed him and told him that I had joined a parachute club. He replied, "Are you nuts? You are 69 years old, and now you're going to start jumping out of airplanes." I told him that I even got a membership card and emailed a copy to him. He immediately telephoned me and yelled, "Good grief, Mom, where are your glasses? This is a membership to a prostitute club, not a parachute club." "Oh, man, I'm in trouble again," I said. "I really don't know what to do. I signed up for 5 jumps a week." The line went quiet, and his friend picked up the phone and said that my son had fainted. Life as a senior citizen is not getting any easier, but sometimes it can be fun. With all the new technology regarding fertility recently, a 65-year-old friend of mine was able to give birth. When she was discharged from the hospital and went home, I went to visit. "May I see the new baby?" I asked. "Not yet," she said. "I'll make coffee and we can chat for a while first." 30 minutes had passed, and I asked, "May I see the new baby now?" "No, not yet," she said. After another few minutes had elapsed, I asked again, "May I see the baby now?" "No, not yet," replied my friend. Growing very impatient, I asked, "Well, when can I see the baby?" "When he cries," she told me. "When he cries?" I demanded. "Why do I have to wait until he cries? Because I forgot where I put him?" During lunch at work, I ate 3 plates of beans, which I know I shouldn't. When I got home, my husband seemed excited to see me and exclaimed delightedly, "Darling, I have a surprise for dinner tonight." He then blindfolded me and led me to my chair at the dinner table. I took a seat, and just as he was about to remove my blindfold, the telephone rang. He made me promise not to touch the blindfold until he returned and went to answer the call. The beans I had consumed were still affecting me, and the pressure was becoming unbearable. So while my husband was out of the room, I seized the opportunity, shifted my weight to one leg, and let one go. It was not only loud, but it smelled like a fertilizer truck running over a skunk in front of a garbage dump. I took my napkin from my lap and fanned the air around me vigorously. Then, shifting to the other leg, I ripped off 3 more. The stink was worse than cooked cabbage. Keeping my ears carefully tuned to the conversation in the other room, I went on releasing atomic bombs like this for another few minutes. The pleasure was indescribable. Eventually, the telephone farewells signaled the end of my freedom, so I quickly fanned the air a few more times with my napkin, placed it on my lap, and folded my hands back on it, feeling very relieved and pleased with myself. My face must have been the picture of innocence when my husband returned, apologizing for taking so long. He asked me if I had peeked through the blindfold, and I assured him I had not. At this point, he removed the blindfold, and 12 dinner guests seated around the table with their hands to their noses chorused, "Happy birthday!" A blonde lady motorist was about 2 hours from San Diego when she was flagged down by a man whose truck had broken down. The man walked up to the car and asked, "Are you going to San Diego?" "Sure," answered the blonde. "Do you need a lift?" "Not for me. I'll be spending the next 3 hours fixing my truck. My problem is I've got 2 chimpanzees in the back that have to be taken to the San Diego Zoo. They're a bit stressed already, so I don't want to keep them on the road all day. Could you possibly take them to the San Diego Zoo for me? I'll give you $200 for your trouble." "I'd be happy to," said the blonde. So the 2 chimpanzees were ushered into the back seat of the blonde's car and carefully strapped into their seat belts, and off they went. 5 hours later, the truck driver was driving through the heart of San Diego when suddenly he was horrified. There was the blonde walking down the street holding hands with the 2 chimps, much to the amusement of a big crowd. With a screech of brakes, he pulled off the road and ran over to the blonde. "What are you doing here?" he demanded. "I gave you $200 to take these chimpanzees to the zoo." "Yes, I know you did," said the blonde. But we had money left over, so now we're going to SeaWorld. A nun wakes up one morning hearing birds sing outside the abbey. She had the morning free, so she decided to go for a walk. She gets out of bed and puts on her garments and her shoes. As she's walking down the hallway to the convent kitchen, another nun looks at her, smiles, and says, "Someone got up on the wrong side of the bed this morning." She finds this a bit odd, but decides to ignore it and keeps on walking. A few moments later, she runs into another nun who says, "Someone got up on the wrong side of the bed this morning." She gets angry. By the end of the hallway, and after 5 more encounters, the nun is furious. She marches straight to the head sister's office and throws the door open. The head nun goes to speak, but is shouted down by the angry nun. "Don't you dare tell me I got up on the wrong side of the bed this morning. It's all I've heard today, and I'm fed up with it." The head nun, stunned, says calmly, "I was going to say nothing of the sort. I was merely going to ask, why are you wearing the bishop's slippers?" On a transatlantic flight, a plane passes through a severe storm. The turbulence is awful, and things go from bad to worse when one wing is struck by lightning. One woman in particular loses it. Screaming, she stands up in the front of the plane. "I'm too young to die. I want my last minutes on Earth to be memorable. I've had plenty of sex in my life, but no one has ever made me really feel like a woman." "Well, I've had it. Is there anyone on this plane who can make me feel like a woman?" For a moment, there is silence. Everyone has forgotten their own peril, and they all stare, riveted, at the desperate woman in the front of the plane. Then a man stands up in the rear of the plane. "I can make you feel like a woman," he says. He's drop-dead gorgeous. Tall and built, with flowing black hair and jet-black eyes, he starts to walk slowly up the aisle, unbuttoning his shirt one button at a time. No one moves. The woman is breathing heavily in anticipation as the strange man approaches. He removes his shirt. Muscles ripple across his chest as he reaches her and extends the arm, holding his shirt to the trembling woman, and whispers, "Here, iron this." A girl is dared by a boy to climb the school flagpole. She bets him $5 that she can, and he agrees. She climbs all the way to the top and gets her $5. She tells her mom after school, feeling proud of her accomplishment. "Oh, honey, he just wanted you to climb the pole so he could see your underwear," she says, shaking her head. A little wiser, she returns to school the next day. This time, the boy offers her $10 to climb the pole. She thinks this is a pretty good racket, so she does. Again after school, she tells her mom, who is this time a little upset. "But, sweetie, remember what I said last time? He's just trying to see your underwear." The girl grins slyly and responds, "I know. That's why I didn't wear any underwear." At the end of their first date, a young man takes his date home. Emboldened by the night, he decides to try for that important first kiss. With an air of confidence, he leans with his hand against the wall and, smiling, he says to her, "Darling, how about a goodnight kiss?" Horrified, she replies, "Are you mad? My parents will see us." "Oh, come on. Who's going to see us at this hour? No, please. Can you imagine if we get caught? Oh, come on, there's nobody around. They're all sleeping. No way, it's just too risky. Oh, please, please, I like you so much. No, no, and no, I like you too, but I just can't. Please." Out of the blue, the porch light goes on, and the girl's sister shows up in her pajamas, hair disheveled. In a sleepy voice, the sister says, "Dad says to go ahead and give him a kiss, or I can do it. Or if need be, he'll come down himself and do it. But for crying out loud, tell him to take his hand off the intercom button." A blind man went to a restaurant. "Menu, sir?" asked the owner. "I'm blind, just bring me one of your dirty forks. I will smell it and order." The confused owner went to the kitchen to retrieve a fork and returned to the blind man. The blind man smelled the fork with a deep breath. "Yes, I will have the lamb with seasoned potatoes and spring vegetables." Unbelievable, thought the owner. The blind man ate and left. 2 weeks later, the blind man returned. The owner, wanting to know how good his smell is, quickly went to the kitchen where his wife Brenda was cooking and said, "Do me a favor and rub this fork over your private part," which she did. He then goes to the blind man and gives him the fork. The blind man takes it and puts it to his nose and says, "Oh, interesting. I never knew Brenda works here." So this blonde woman walks into the local store and says, "Hey, I want a kilo of sugar, but I'll pay you later." The clerk smirks and says, "How about you give me a little something first? Make me happy, and I'll hook you up with the sugar for free?" She agrees, and he takes her to the back and starts doing his thing. She held her hand behind her back and felt that his balls were hanging. She chuckles and says, "Well, let them in too and give me some jaggery also." A man was sick and tired of going to work every day while his wife stayed home. He wanted her to see what he went through, so he prayed, "Dear Lord, I go to work every day and put in 8 hours while my wife merely stays at home. I want her to know what I go through, so please allow her body to switch with mine for a day." God in his infinite wisdom granted the man's wish. The next morning, sure enough, the man awoke as a woman. He arose, cooked breakfast for his mate, awakened the kids, set out their school clothes, fed them breakfast, packed their lunches, drove them to school, came home and picked up the dry cleaning, took it to the cleaners, stopped at the bank to make a deposit, went grocery shopping, then drove home to put away the groceries, paid the bills, and balanced the checkbook. He cleaned the cat's litter box and bathed the dog. Then it was already 1 p.m., and he hurried to make the beds, do the laundry, vacuum, dust, and sweep and mop the kitchen floor. Ran to the school to pick up the kids and got into an argument with them on the way home. Set out milk and cookies and got the kids organized to do their homework. Then he set up the ironing board and watched TV while he did the ironing. At 4:30, he began peeling potatoes and washing vegetables for salad, braiding the pork chops, and snapping fresh beans for supper. After supper, he cleaned the kitchen, ran the dishwasher, folded laundry, bathed the kids, and put them to bed. At 9 p.m., he was exhausted, and though his daily chores weren't finished, he went to bed where he was expected to make love, which he managed to get through without complaint. The next morning, he awoke and immediately knelt by the bed and said, "Lord, I don't know what I was thinking. I was so wrong to envy my wife's being able to stay home all day. Please, oh please, let us trade back. Amen." The Lord, in his infinite wisdom, replied, "My son, I feel you have learned your lesson, and I will be happy to change things back to the way they were. But you'll have to wait 9 months, though. You got pregnant last night." A man is on his deathbed, and he asks his wife, "Martha, soon I will be gone forever, and there's something I have to know. In all these 50 years of marriage, have you ever been unfaithful to me?" Martha replied, "Well, Henry, I have to be honest with you. Yes, I've been unfaithful to you 3 times during these 50 years, but always for a good reason." Henry was obviously hurt by his wife's confession, but said, "I never suspected. Can you tell me what you mean by good reasons?" Martha said, "The first time was shortly after we were married and we were about to lose our little house because we couldn't pay the mortgage. Do you remember that one evening I went to see the banker and the next day he notified you that the loan would be extended?" Henry recalled the visit to the banker and said, "I can forgive you for that. You saved our home, but what about the second time?" Martha asked, "And do you remember when you were so sick but we didn't have the money to pay for the heart surgery you needed? Well, I went to see your doctor one night, and, if you recall, he did the surgery at no charge." "I recall that," said Henry. "And you did it to save my life, so of course I can forgive you for that. Now tell me about the third time." "All right," Martha said. "Do you remember when you ran for president of your golf club and you needed 73 more votes?" A woman was at her hairdresser's, getting her hair styled before a trip to Rome with her husband. She mentioned her upcoming vacation, and the hairdresser responded, "Rome? Why would anyone want to go there? It's overcrowded and filthy. You're out of your mind, so how are you getting there?" "We're flying United," the woman replied. "We got a great deal on the tickets." "United," the hairdresser scoffed. "That airline is a disaster. Their planes are ancient, the flight attendants are grumpy, and they're always late. So, where are you staying in Rome?" "We'll be at a little place called Taste, right by the Tiber River." "Don't bother, I know that place. Everyone thinks it's fancy, but it's a dump. We're also planning to visit the Vatican and maybe even see the Pope." "Ha, you and a million other tourists. You'll barely see him. He'll look like a speck from where you're standing. Good luck with that awful trip of yours." A month later, the woman returned to the salon for another hairdo. The hairdresser asked about her trip. "It was amazing," the woman said. "We flew on one of United's brand new planes, and it was overbooked, so they bumped us up to first class. The food and wine were fabulous, and we had a handsome 28-year-old steward who pampered us the whole flight." "And the Taste Hotel?" the hairdresser asked, skeptical. "It was incredible. They'd just finished a $5 million renovation, and it was gorgeous. It was the best hotel in the city. They were overbooked, so they upgraded us to the owner's suite at no extra charge." "Well, that's all nice and good, but I'm sure you didn't get to see the Pope." "Actually, we were lucky. While touring the Vatican, a Swiss guard tapped me on the shoulder and said the Pope likes to meet a few visitors. He invited me into his private room to wait, and sure enough, 5 minutes later, the Pope walked in and shook my hand." "Wow, that's incredible. What did he say?" "He looked at me and said, 'Who messed up your hair?'" An Army officer is having a heartfelt conversation with his wife in the kitchen before heading off for another long deployment. "Sweetheart, I'm about to be away for another year." "Oh, I'll miss you terribly." "I'll miss you too," he says with a mischievous glance at her chest. "And these lovely ladies of yours." Blushing, she suggests, "Why not give them a little attention now to make up for the coming year?" His face lights up. "Absolutely. I'll dedicate a squeeze for every month I'll be away." He begins, May, squeeze June, squeeze July, and so on, naming every month. Suddenly, he notices their 10-year-old son, Michael, standing beside them. Hastily retracting his hands, the wife exclaims, "Oh my goodness, Michael, when did you get here?" After a moment of thoughtful silence, the kid responds, Mid-September?" Fred and Mary got married but couldn't afford a honeymoon, so they spent their first night at Fred's parents' house. The next morning, little Johnny, Fred's kid brother, sat down for breakfast. As he grabbed his backpack, he asked, "Mom, are Fred and Mary up yet?" "No," she replied. Johnny smirked. "Do you know what I think?" His mom cut him off. "I don't want to hear what you think. Just go to school." At lunchtime, Johnny came home and asked again, "Are Fred and Mary up yet?" "No." Johnny grinned. "Do you know what I think?" His mom groaned. "Enough, Johnny. Eat your lunch and get back to school." After school, Johnny walked in and asked one more time, "Are Fred and Mary up yet?" His mom sighed. "Fine, Johnny. What do you think?" Johnny shrugged. "Well, last night Fred came to my room looking for the Vaseline, and I think I gave him my airplane glue." An arrogant professor boards a plane and gets a seat beside an old man. Mid-flight, the professor decides to play a game with the old man and prove he's intellectually superior, so he turns to him and says, "Hey, do you want to play a little game with me?" The old man looks at him and says, "Depends. What type of game?" The professor goes on to explain the game. Taking turns, we'll ask each other one question at a time. If the other knows the answer, the asker gives him $1, and if he doesn't, he gives $1 to the asker. Want to play? The professor grins, knowing his general knowledge is vastly superior. To his dismay, the old man refuses. Determined to make him agree, the professor raises the stakes for him. "If I lose, I'll give you $2 instead of $1. "No." "$5. "No." $10. "I told you, no." Desperate, the professor makes one final offer. "If I lose, I'll give you $100. And if you lose, you'll only give me $1. The professor pleads. The old man ponders this, then sighs. "Only if I get to start," and the professor immediately agrees. "Ask away," the professor says, confident he'll never lose. The old man asks, "What has 5 heads, 40 feet, and lives inside of a bucket?" The professor turns the riddle over in his head, trying to find anything that fits the description. After an hour of intense concentration, the professor gives up. Grumbling, he pulls out his wallet and gives the old man $100. He wastes no time and asks him, "So what has 5 heads, 40 feet, and lives inside of a bucket?" The old man smiles and says, "I've got no idea. Here's your $1. A junior high school was recently faced with a unique problem. A number of 12-year-old girls were beginning to use lipstick and would often press their lips against the bathroom mirror. This problem became so bad that the mirrors became almost unusable. Every night, Mr. Boudreau, the maintenance man, would remove the lipstick, and then the next day the girls would mess up the mirrors again. Finally, the principal decided that something had to be done. She called all the girls to the bathroom and met them there along with Mr. Boudreau. She explained that all these lip prints were causing a major problem for the maintenance man who had to clean the mirrors every night. To demonstrate how difficult it had been to clean up the mirrors, she asked Mr. Boudreau to show the girls how much effort was required to clean up the lipstick. He took out a long-handled squeegee, dipped it in the toilet, and then cleaned the mirrors with it. Since then, there have been no lip prints on the mirror. A flight crew is landing at an unfamiliar airport. The control tower gives them a runway assignment, and they start their approach. The pilot says, "Does that runway look kind of short to you?" The co-pilot says, "It sure does. I thought it was supposed to be longer than that." "Me too. Better set full flaps." "Full flaps set. I want thrust reversers the minute we touch. Standing by on the thrust reversers. And full power once thrust reversers are set." "Roger that. I'm going to try to catch the very end of the runway and stand on the brakes. Stand by to reverse thrust." "Roger that." They touch down, blast the thrust reversers, stomp the brakes, and just manage to get the plane stopped before it runs off into the grass. "God in heaven," panted the pilot. "That was the shortest runway I've ever landed on." His co-pilot says, "Yeah, but look how wide it is." A man hires a blonde to paint stripes down the middle of a road, giving her one simple rule: she must paint at least 4 miles per day to keep the job. On the first day, she absolutely crushes it. 8 miles. The boss is blown away. The second day, she paints 4 miles. Not as impressive, but still meeting the requirement. On the third day, she only manages 2 miles. The boss raises an eyebrow, but figures maybe she's just tired. By the fourth day, she barely scrapes out 1 mile. Frustrated, the boss finally asks, "What's going on? You started off amazing. Why are you slowing down so much?" The blonde wipes her forehead and sighs, "Well, I'm getting farther and farther away from the paint bucket." Returning home from work, a young woman was shocked to find that her house had been ransacked and burglarized. She telephoned the police at once and reported the crime. The police dispatcher broadcast the call on the channels, and a K-9 unit patrolling nearby was the first to respond. As the K-9 officer approached the house with his dog on a leash, the blonde woman ran out on the porch and shuddered at the sight of the cop and his dog. Then she sat down on the steps, put her face in her hands, and moaned, "I came home to find all my possessions stolen. I called the police for help, and what do? They send me a blind policeman." Right in the middle of lovemaking, a man dies of a heart attack. As the funeral arrangements are being made, the mortician informs the widow that he cannot get rid of her dead husband's rigor mortis, which is sticking straight up in the air, and if they don't do something, it will look odd in the coffin at the funeral. The widow tells the guy to cut it off and stick it up her dear departed's behind. The mortician can't believe his ears, but the widow is adamant, so he does it. During the funeral, friends and relatives of the man were concerned to see a tear in the corner of his eye, but the widow assured them that there was no cause to be alarmed. Just before the casket is closed, the widow leans in and whispers in the husband's ear, "It hurts, doesn't it?" A newlywed couple was still enjoying their honeymoon phase, but there was one small hiccup. The wife wasn't exactly a master in the kitchen. On their first night at home, the husband came home from work to find her looking a bit sheepish. "I'm so sorry I burned dinner," she admitted. The husband smiled and said, "No problem, sweetheart. How about we skip dinner and make love instead?" The next evening, after work, he walked in again to find her apologizing. "I messed up dinner again, darling." He grinned and winked. "That's okay, let's just head to bed." On the third night, when he walked through the door, he was confused to find his wife sitting on the radiator. "What are you doing?" he asked. With a playful smile, she replied, "I'm just warming up dinner." A woman decided to treat herself to a luxurious overnight stay at a fancy hotel for her 70th birthday. When she checked out the following morning, the desk clerk handed her a bill for $250. She was shocked. "Why is it so expensive?" she asked. "I didn't even have breakfast." The clerk explained that $250 was the standard rate and that breakfast was included had she chosen to have it. Determined to understand the charge, she asked to speak to the manager. The manager, already briefed by the clerk, calmly replied, "This hotel has an Olympic-sized pool and a large conference center, both available for guests to use." "But I didn't use them," she protested. "Well, they're here, and you could have." He went on to mention the world-class entertainers performing at the hotel. "I didn't attend any shows either," she replied. "Still, we have them, and you could have." No matter what amenities the manager listed, her response was always the same. "But I didn't use it." And he continued his counter with, "Well, you could have." After several minutes of back and forth, the woman finally agreed to pay, wrote a check, and handed it over. The manager looked at the check, puzzled. "Madam, this check is only for $50. "Correct," she said with a smile. "I charged you $200 for sleeping with me." The manager was flabbergasted. "But I didn't sleep with you." "Too bad," she said. "I was here and you could have."